Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Tech Talk stage here at Event Tech Live. We are joined now by a lovely panel to talk about what are the digital challenges in the exhibition industry. It's by the Exhibition Think Tank Club. Got it right. I got it right. Just to make sure before I introduce the moderator, is if you've got any questions, we will be taking some live at the end of the session, but you can also send them via this link on the screen over here. Go into the session, submit your questions, and we will then take them at the end of the session. Anyway, without further ado, I want to hand over to Daniel, who is Key Account Director at Expo Platform.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Hello everyone, nice to meet you. As I said, my name is Daniel Mortimer, a Key Account Director at Expo Platform. Today we'll be discussing a recent survey that was taken place by the Exhibition Think Tank and also in partnership with Event Tech Live to really understand what are the digital challenges in the exhibition industry. I think it's a big conversation on the show floor today. I've been discussing it for the last couple of days. I'm sure most of you have as well. But today we're joined by our excellent panelists who will be helping us to discuss the survey results and also to dig a little bit deeper into this. If we do have any questions during the actual session itself, feel free to answer them anytime, either with your hand or with the QR code there. Love to get some feedback and make this as interactive as possible. So before we get started, let's just firstly have some introductions from Alison, Duncan and Matt. So who'd like to start?
Sure. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Matt Harris, CEO of Conduco. We're an we make trade shows intelligent. We have a platform which is an attendee engagement platform that allows attendees to collect stuff from around the show. For exhibitors, that means leads. For the organizer, it means data. For the attendees, it means a convenient experience.
Hello, my name's Alison Church. I'm the CMO for EasyFairs UK and Global. We run a portfolio of shows across Europe and a few also in Northern Africa. And I mostly look at or oversee all the marketing and technology side of things for EasyFairs.
Thanks, guys. I'm Duncan Reed. I work for a company called Reset Connect. We are a launch exhibition about sustainability, which launched coming out of the pandemic. And I've had about 20 years experience in events. 10 years at UBM Informa and about 10 years at Clarion. At Clarion, I kind of led on all their integration of a load of digital platforms in the business. We did swap card and grip tests. We rolled out Salesforce, Pardot, various other things when I was there, and I kind of led on the team on that. So pleased to be here. Thanks, Dan.
And my old boss. Weird you didn't mention that.
I was going to leave that off for today. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So let's get into it. So I think, as we've already stated, this survey was sent out. You can see it had 106 responses to what are the digital challenges in the exhibition industry. Covered a few different areas, some of them free text and some of them covering the main points. So firstly, we'll start with the first question, which was how relevant, in your view, are data-driven strategies for the exhibition industry? As you can see here, overwhelming response for very important. 75% of those surveyed believe it's extremely important, which I'm sure most of you can agree with. If we start with you, Alison. So where are you standing at the moment on the importance of data, and how much are you utilising that now with the amount of data you receive from the new technology that's available?
So I think, data is at the heart of everything we do as an exhibition company, but also I think generally across the exhibition industry. Exhibition companies are very data rich in lots and lots of ways, and event technology is only growing that in terms of not just the data that we gather on people, but also understanding trends and I guess experiences and what people are interested in. So I think it underpins everything we do. I think how important it is for us going forward, because we want to be more in the digital space and actually not just capitalising on it, but also I think it's really important for us to be providing value to our communities year round to actually be able to deliver the best, I guess, experience for them and deliver more value for them year round. So digital is becoming more and more important, and that's all about data. So it's kind of all quite circular as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that data driving your decisions for following events that you're receiving from the feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, so we look at all sorts of data points, whether it's kind of what people are interested in at the show, whether it's surveys, whether it's kind of all the marketing analysis, the tracking that we do on everything, whether it's sales or marketing. And we're obviously using more and more digital also across everything we do from an ops perspective, which also then feeds back more data to us as well. So, yeah, I mean, we do a massive amount of data analysis after every single show and actually during every single campaign. So it constantly drives every decision that we make.
Absolutely. And Duncan, if we go to you, obviously you're in the market now for a launch event, which creates its own challenges, but also gives you a great opportunity to look at the data that's available and see what gaps are available in the market. How has that been working for you, and what are your strategies using data as a platform?
I mean, I completely agree with Alison. I think, at our heart, the events are really our kind of data is one of our core parts of our products. We're not like a car company making cars. What our business is very simply our brands. In my case, that's a new brand, data, and obviously that's one of the key things we're talking about today. And then people. And I think actually the pandemic probably, coming out of the pandemic, we really saw the value of those three parts of our business. A lot of the big brands that were the big events in the industry, those brands have kept going. And I mean, if you look at the kind of attendance, look at World Travel Market last week, whenever it was, and look at a lot of the brands that have been coming back to life since the pandemic. That they've all re-emerged pretty much. Most of the shows, which is great to see, and that's the power of the brand. The data piece, I think the pandemic really, changed how we looked at data, and I think we were looking at it before from, particularly from a sort of marketing point of view about what was working, whether LinkedIn was working or whatever it might be. And I think particularly doing a new launch, that's been quite a key part for us is really understanding, because you're starting your marketing campaign from scratch. So all the data points are really important. The exhibitors as well, when you're selling a new show and a new concept, understanding which exhibitors are being successful and which aren't is absolutely key to how you kind of rebook them and also grow that show continually. And then obviously, the people as well. The data actually gives us a great way of analysing who the best people are and who, how you can help people and nurture people. So I think it's not just, it's not just a way of looking at the kind of the measure of your sort of external ability as an event organizer, but also how you can improve your own team and how you can improve what it is that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, if we go to you, so a lot of your business is around driving that data for organisers. So how much of a shift have you seen over the last few years in kind of the importance of data for organisers?
We've definitely seen a big shift. We've got our big customers like RX who are using data extensively, same as Easy Fares. But we're also seeing a lot of customers sort of identify which pieces of the data sort of jigsaw they can bite off and utilise. So you mentioned, exhibitor success. Salespeople being able to talk to the exhibitors on the show floor whilst it's happening, to then have the appropriate conversation with them to see, are they having a good show? If not, how can we improve it next time? Similarly, the conversation has really shifted from data as a real-time concept to becoming a reality. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see more events, not everybody, but more and more events actually start to think about how they can utilise that data in real time.
And I think that's a great question. So, Alison, if we go back to you, so the events industry as a whole is there's a lot of habits that we find of repeat year on year. Do you find that the events industry is keeping up with the technology that's available and that data is being utilised as effectively as it could do at the moment?
It's an interesting question. I think it probably does depend from organiser to organiser. I guess there are going to be some who use a lot of event technology and are using that data really efficiently. There's probably some organisers who are using event technology and maybe not really looking into the data and working out what it means for you. And then, there are probably some who are sort of starting out who don't have that opportunity. And we were actually talking beforehand about kind of the agility perhaps of some of the bigger companies to be able to sort of integrate all of that across everything they do. And I think perhaps some of the smaller companies have that ability to move quicker and take event technology on and actually have the time to sort of look at the micro level of it, as long as they've got that expertise internally to do so or have the support from their providers to do so. So I think it's really mixed, but it's I think, over the 11 and a half years I've been at Easy Fares, I would say it's grown absolutely massively, and it's now just part of our infrastructure, whereas I think we were a long way behind about 10 or so years ago, where a lot of companies weren't really using that amount of, they'd use registration, maybe a few other bolt-on things, but in websites, and that's pretty much it. So we're a long way from where we were, but I think we've still got a long way to go as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Duncan, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think the big organisers. I mean, the data and the kind of tech that's out there at the moment is, it's giving us a lot more insight. I think if you're a big organiser, the challenge almost is actually how you kind of run these big RFPs and integrate some of the tech into the bigger, wider company if you're using a load of kind of different tech products. And then I think conversely with a kind of small startup, the problem you've also got is that it's almost the same challenge. There's so many bits of kit on the market. How do you actually find something that allows you to integrate everything together? And I think walking around the event, EventTech Live today, there's a lot of really, really amazing products. My favourite is there's a little AI tool just over there that actually takes videos and basically shortens them down to 10% of the videos. So if you do a lot of video content, put it on your website, it's a huge time saver. So that's kind of my tip of the show at the moment. But I think trying to find how, whether you're a big company or a small company, which are the bits of tech that really make a difference to your business, because I think we are, most companies don't have like a big internal tech team who they can deploy and go and look at different bits of kit and then come out and try them in their business. So I think, as an organizer, we want it to be as easy as possible. So that if you want to use Gleanin, how does Gleanin, connect with my existing speaker management software? And there's whole loads of that ecosystem's actually can become a lot more complicated.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point. I think everything about technology is looking to simplify, whereas sometimes it can make it more complicated. There's too many options available. Let's move on to the next question. So, how skilled, in your view, is our industry to design services based on big data? So this one was a bit split. So I think the majority sat in the middle, and I think this goes on to an interesting question about the personnel within the industry and how adept we are to be dealing with the requirements that potentially technology puts on us. So, Matt, someone in the industry, I think it's probably a good place for you to start.
Okay. I would definitely start by saying I don't think this industry is actually creating big data yet. We're just starting to learn what data is. And I think the vendors like myself and yourself, we've really been focused on just generating data for the past few years. And now that we're starting to generate it, trying to figure out what we can actually do with it. But I think somewhere in the middle is a good thing. I think that's sort of a representation of where people's minds are. But starting to actually design services around data is really challenging. Educating salespeople how to interpret the data to have a conversation, the marketing automation, all of the attendee engagement stuff, the recommendations, etc. It's not easy. And I think we're just starting on that journey.
Yeah, and Alison, I mean, do you find there's a challenge in interpreting that data and having the personnel to do that?
To a degree, yes. I was going to say I completely agree with Matt in terms of I don't think we're at the big data side of things, because I think when you are, everything's integrated and everything's very seamless, and you're sort of almost getting that sort of given to you on a silver platter. So I think we are at the stage, I think, as an industry generally, where we're having to do a lot of things manually. Some of the event tech, as you say, isn't necessarily making our lives easier. It's almost creating additional work to push it and make it successful. I think it's important, but I think there are people in the industry who are very good on the data and the digital side, but I don't think we're particularly strong in it. And actually, what I find quite interesting is some of the very sort of digitally focused people and sort of data focused people are increasingly going to the suppliers in the industry and not necessarily sticking with the organisers, and I think that probably says quite a lot.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And Duncan, obviously your perspective from a startup, having personnel to do this is probably impossible. So what are your processes doing?
I mean, I hate to pull the age card, but I'm generally finding that people who are younger are probably more digital native than those who are slightly older. And I think, the events industry was probably one of the last to go through this kind of big digital transformation. So if you look at things like retail, that became a digital business, 2001. And as an events industry, we've kind of kicked that can down the road for as long as possible. I think the pandemic forced us to have, a lot of the companies are already starting to use, Pardot and various systems like that to really do their marketing automation. But real sort of looking at everything in your business and how you're doing that, I don't think we were doing as much. We weren't really measuring all the interactions. We were letting people walk around shows still and just, light pen, and the organiser not really looking at the data, the amount of leads the exhibitors got. And I think, lots of organisers were doing that. I think the pandemic gave us quite a, it's like you think of things like Zoom, 4 years ago, no one used video calling, like no one. Everyone had it on their device, and now everyone does. And you wouldn't think, if someone didn't understand how Zoom worked, you'd think they were like crazy. And I think that kind of digital transformation has happened in the events industry at pace and scale. I think it's opened lots of opportunities for us, but I think it's also created just as many challenges that we're trying to work through and our people are trying to work through. What is a hybrid event? What does a successful hybrid event look like? I don't think anyone yet knows what that answer quite is, because it's different by markets, and you can, trying to find the people that can understand the revenue, and the importance of revenue and maintaining your existing revenue whilst introducing this new digital business model is obviously quite a challenge, I think, for the whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Alison.
So I was just going to chip in with one more thing, actually, because I think the stage we're at as an industry at the moment is that we are having to manually interpret a lot of this stuff. And I think at the moment, certainly from my point of view, we've got a bigger team running not necessarily that many more events. And yes, the events have grown, but I've got people who are dedicated to marketing analysis, to data analysis, to digital. I've got specific people who are taken on for that skill set. And they're the ones having to spoon feed all of the sales teams and the marketing teams. And we've got the same on the finance side, people who are analysing that data constantly. Helps us improve our events and grow our events for sure. But actually, we're finding our headcount's probably higher.
Okay, well, that's a very interesting point. Sorry, anything to add on that at all? Okay, let's move on to the next question, because I know this question. So before we ran this event today, we did actually have an online seminar showing the results of this. And this particular question, it really created a bit of a debate. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this today. Again, if anybody has any points on this, please raise them in the audience. How much percentage of our industry's revenue can be generated through data services? Now, up to 20% of the revenue was expected from 40% of the people asked. And now that is obviously quite a large number, and it's something that I think we had a bit of a split opinion on, or definitely some thoughts on from the panelists. So I know you had a very interesting point that you raised about primary and secondary revenue.
Yeah, I think where we got to on the presentation was, how do you define what revenue is created from the data? And we know Easy Fares, you've been very good at actually doing that. So, is the data being used to increase or hasten your sales cycle, or is it being used to generate new revenues through sponsorship advertising, or online sponsorship, or physical signage in the venue that's more targeted to the people that are looking at it? And so for me, the question was, for me, all of your revenue can be generated from data if you're actually using the data within the business properly. So I was curious about the question.
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah, I think, we were talking about it because I mentioned that we'd been selling EasyGo packages for, I can't even remember how long now, certainly probably since about 2013 in their current guise. And I actually did look up the number after the presentation, and it's about 9% of our event revenues, 8% of our overall revenues that are actually coming from that specific package. And that was before the pandemic even hit. So yes, we are looking to increase that and look at our digital revenues outside of the event specifically. But that's still all bolted onto the event. So we were kind of discussing, well, do you say that's data, or do you say that's just monetizing the event more, or the pre-show marketing? And so it's actually quite hard to divide it up. But I suppose, data is driving every stand sale that we make anyway, and always was. So it's a difficult question. But I think if we look at it from a digital perspective, I would be surprised to see. I'm surprised to see it as high as that actually on that graph.
Absolutely.
And I think from when the original question came up for me, I think the way we were looking at it, I think was, a lot of, obviously when the pandemic came, a lot of our businesses were very, very reliant on these kind of, fixed point events. And there was so much revenue tied up in that. I think for me, this question was about what additional revenue can we find on top of our existing core business? Is there an opportunity for the events industry to move into doing more webinars or more, ancillary products? So, even research. We've got these huge, great exhibitor databases, huge, great visitor and audience databases. They are, and we own our markets often. Is there a massive opportunity to do big research pieces of work there and actually look at some additional business models or revenue lines that sit alongside the events? Yeah. And that to me was kind of where this question sat, because I agree with the guys. I think actually our businesses are, or if they're not, then they might not be here for much longer, they're all about these kind of digital and data points that tell us what exhibitors are booked, which bits of the show were busy, how many people came in before 1 o'clock. We've known all this stuff for a long time. I think the pandemic probably gave us, as we switched to kind of webinars more, gave us a few more data points, and some of those are starting to come back into shows. But I think for me, this question really is, what additional revenue can we grow on top of that existing business model, which we've had for, however long. And I think, 20% is, it's going to be a challenge, because back to the people point, I'm not sure we've got enough digital natives really in the sector. And as you say, there's a lot of salespeople who still don't understand really what some of those digital data points are, and you're having to get, ops people or data analysts and kind of explain it to them.
Is there also a point in there about the exhibitors and their expectations of what an event is, and maybe there's a misunderstanding of the digital opportunities that are available there? So it's not only from the organizer perspective, but also from the exhibitor side as well.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think often, if you go to a big business, if you're selling into an Oracle or a Microsoft or a Google or something like that, these big brands who come and exhibit our shows, they've got an events team, and that events team is in charge of spending the events budget, and they have a digital team. And that digital team is selling, spending the digital stuff. And actually, we as an event organizer are often just pitching to the events team, not really going to the digital team, and maybe don't know them. And people will often do the easy sell. I mean, in 20 years of doing sales, you'll always try and sell the easiest product, and sell as much of that. And if someone says, "Can we start doing webinars, or can we start doing some ads on an online magazine twice a year?" You're going to stick doing your stand sales because it's the guys and you can go out for lunch and the rest of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very important point. So let's move on to the next slide. So, and this actually blends quite nicely into what we're talking about. So, 365 community and engaging with your customers all year round is becoming more and more important. How do you think digital contributes to your marketing strategy? So, I think there's a big piece here about engaging your audience and putting that into a digital opportunities. So, how much do you think is being done? Is there enough being done for this, and what can we do going forward?
I think there's more that can be done. I mean, this sort of goes back to my what is hybrid question a little bit earlier. I don't think as a business, we've kind of, as an industry, we've really worked out what the blend looks like yet, for our digital year-round products. And, again, during the pandemic, we tried lots of different models. I think for me, the Premier League offers kind of the best case study for how I think, where as an industry we can get to. They've got a really strong live product, which is Saturdays at 3 o'clock, and every Saturday at 3 o'clock there's this live product. You can't watch that program in this country online. You can only get the live product at ground. So what it's done by running all these Friday night footballs and Sundays and Mondays and match of the day highlights packages is it's actually made their live product much stronger. And that's just digital touch points. They know how many people are watching the Monday night football. They're selling advertising on it, so they're increasing some revenue over there, but it's actually driving their core products. And I think this kind of year-round piece we can do with the industry if we kind of get it right. It's about using webinars before events to stay in touch with that audience or to get them excited about a topic. Post-event, it's about having the match of the day highlights thing to actually hopefully get them to come to the next year's event because they realise that they want to go and see Tottenham or Liverpool or whatever it might be. So, I think we've got. If you look at the growth of the Premier League scene since it kind of changed its model from just doing this Saturday 3 o'clock football thing, I think it's been a huge amount of growth, big global products. UK, British organisers, we are all around the world. I think if we can get this product right as well in the event space, I think we've got a really sort of rosy future. And actually, we shouldn't be scared of digital or at all for our sector. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Alison, keen to get your thoughts on this. I know it's something that you're working on currently.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Duncan was saying, and I think, I was a little bit puzzled by the question actually. When I first read it, I was thinking about how much does digital contribute to your marketing strategy. I was even surprised that there were 9 people saying 1 and 2, because surely digital is part of every marketing strategy. Don't imagine we're doing fax and postal mails and telephone calls only. So, but I think if you look at it from this 365 point of view, yes. It's a challenge because I think we get so focused on the live event, but of course it's incredibly important, and if we take it seriously and we build that value year round for the communities we serve, then we're going to become more valuable to them, of course, and therefore we can we can monetize it in whatever way, whether it's strengthening the main event or, one thing we're looking at Easy Fairs is kind of building proper communities and membership communities year round, and then once we start to build a strength there, then we can look at how can we monetize that, and become more of like subscriptions, membership sort of side of business, and actually not just get our revenue from events and all the bolt-on stuff around the events.
Definitely. And Matt, keen to get your thoughts on where we are with the 365 opportunity in events.
I think it's actually a really interesting conversation. I keep coming back to the fact that if you look at the sort of engagement curve of a person with a particular event, so leading up to the event, they're starting to become more engaged, they come on site, they go to the event, they may be participating digitally, and then they leave, and there's a huge drop-off. And starting to look at 365 is how can you get people to interact with each other or prepare for the show or continue to interact after the show. And as you start to extend that sort of engagement curve, then you may start to see some communities evolving. But that's your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are challenges in it, and I think it's a personnel issue, it's an ideas issue. But yeah,
I just think one thing to follow on from your point, Matt, as well, is that I don't think we should think about the fact that we're building communities. These communities around most industries already exist, and it's about how we serve them, how we tap into them, and how we can add value to them. So I don't think it's necessarily about building separate communities. It's about going, like, where is the community, how's it functioning right now, what does that community need, and then how can we be a part of that?
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid point, is understanding the needs before you build something. I think too often we see from our perspective of community is a great idea, let's do it, and then it doesn't necessarily work because there wasn't that strategy beforehand to understand what the requirements. We've got a few questions which we'll touch on quickly. So the first question we have is, what tools are best for monitoring the success of the various marketing channels to give visibility to what is actually working and what is not? So anybody wants to take that at all?
Let me just read the question again. Love the fact you're pointing to me,
What
Duncan.
tools are best for monitoring the success of the various marketing channels to give visibility to what is actually working and what is not?
So I think, obviously registration platforms, if they must be providing you insight into how people are finding you and how people are coming across the event and registering for the event. I think that's critical. I think a lot of on-site technology in terms of, kind of measuring what people are interested in the hall. We use the competitor to Conduco, unfortunately, visits what used to be Poken, and that gives us a really good idea about what sort of areas of the hall are, or what particular topics are important to people in terms of what they're touching on. And I think as well, just making sure that you're constantly analysing everything that's going through your website and how people are interacting with emails. As I say, we're quite lucky. We've got a team that's entirely dedicated to crunching the numbers, and I think one of our most valuable tools is Excel.
That's not a good thing. We shouldn't be admitting that here.
And I'd say I'm probably with you, actually. I think that's if anyone wants to go and get some investment to set up a new event piece of tech, can we have a dashboard, please, that integrates all the bits of technology here and gives us all the stats from all those bits of technology? Because I think you're right. I think back to the integration point earlier. It's so hard. If I want to look at how my website's performing, I'm on Google Analytics or I'm on ASP's back office. If I'm then looking to see which emails are performing, I'm having to trace all these different bits through, and often, I'm running multiple campaigns across LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, and you're trying to integrate that information with your email campaigns, and also trying to integrate it with your exhibitor campaigns. Exhibitor campaigns, and that's the tracking codes we get from things like ASP are one way of doing that, but a lot of exhibitors aren't using any kind of codes or tracking at all. So actually trying to work out which of our exhibitors are the ones, a third of our attendee registrations come from our exhibitors. So actually trying to work out which are the good exhibitors and which ones we need to work harder on, is a huge challenge. And then, trade associations and other partners also, helping kind of put people into our funnels. So, I don't think maybe someone can design it by the end of next year. Let's see it. Let's give them a free stand.
This time next year, that's the challenge.
Say again? By the end of today, and you can get a free stand next year here. Is that right, Adam? Wherever Adam is?
So I think one of the things that's important for us to touch on, and I think as we're kind of running out of time here, obviously being at a technology event now, there's a lot of technology on the floor which is moving this industry forward, and there are certain things which are must-haves. So we're really keen to understand from you, what are the must-haves for you as organisers, and also Matt, from your side, what's your perspective on that? But equally, what are the challenges with that? Because it's not plain sailing, if we're completely honest with ourselves at the moment, and what do we need to get there?
I I think for me, the must-have at the moment is around. I heard Patrick, who's the guy who runs Web Summit, speak at the AO conference a few months ago, and I think one of the challenges we have at shows is that how you get our visitors to really interact with the touch points that we give them. How do we get them to sit here in an audience and engage? How do we get them to engage with the exhibitors? And Conduco does definitely provide some of that information. For me, one of the kind of key things at an event is, I want to encourage people to have meetings. I want to encourage my sponsors or exhibitors to have meetings with the attendees. And how do we do stuff to really encourage that? And sometimes that is about having a pre-planned meeting, but sometimes it's just about having, you meet some guy at the bar and actually you starting to record that connection. And how we can kind of, as an industry, make that whole process, much more measurable and much easier to happen. I think handsets over the next couple of years are going to become more and more important. I think we're going to start using them a lot more for, we already use them for absolutely everything, but I think they're going to become more important in trade shows, and how we actually kind of collect that information and make it usable, so we haven't got to look at another dashboard, I think is key.
Yeah. Alison?
Yeah, I think you're entirely right. I think anything that helps that audience engagement side in a seamless way and in a really, intelligent way, for me, would be really powerful. For example, I have somebody with the touch point technology that we use in the smart badges. I actually have somebody dedicated to running that and pushing it and making sure that we're dealing with all the kind of the audience communication. And for me, again, that's extra manpower. So whilst I think it's great technology, is there a way it could be better served that is just more intuitive? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really powerful. And I think the other thing that I would always look for with event technology is the integration, because it's such a big part of what we do. And unfortunately, a lot of event technology requires additional manual work, and therefore it's increasing headcount or increasing workload for the existing headcount to be able to run it.
Definitely. And Matt?
For me, the most important thing by a long way is actually having someone at our client actually engaged and interested in running the process. If the customer is not engaged and interested and just trying to find a way to do it just because it's meant to be done, it won't work. The second thing is a great relationship between the customer and vendor. And so many times there is an expectation that once a decision is made about tech, it's going to work. And so often it doesn't, for the integration reasons. And it's really important that everybody has an open mind that it's not going to be perfect in the first year.
Yeah.
And if you can find champions in the organization, have an open mind about what is realistically going to work in the first year, adopt a learning process and make it better the next year, then I think we'll be on a good path to having whatever tech you select actually work well.
I think that's a really good point. I think all too often we're all guilty of expecting unbelievable performance in year one. But I find one of the biggest issues with my clients is engagement. Is you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it use the app. Is probably the problem I find, and I think that's something that we all need to figure out as an industry. So, what can we do from the organizer side, Duncan?
Well. Specifically on using the app, I heard a great thing recently. Again, it was the Web Summit guy, and we all send out emails that have got our barcode on or tickets or whatever it might be. And actually, what he does on the Web Summit app is the only place you can get your ticket is by going into the Web Summit app. Yeah. So you basically have to log in. You have to set up a profile to get into the app to get your ticket to get into the event, which means that they've got 99% adoption on the app. Some people still turn up and don't do it. I don't know how they get in. Obviously a massive queue for them. But yeah, that just encourages people to get into the app, and it basically makes them engaged. Mm-hmm. Now, I think your question was more around how do you get an organizer to stay engaged with the product, particularly if it's, being bought by the CEO because he wants to have, audience engagement or more matchmaking. And then, how do you actually ensure that people do that? I don't know, I think it's probably, I'm amazed still at the amount of bits of tech that are rolled out across the industry where a new person will start using it and they don't get a short, oh, you're going to be using it, right, here's your login. That, how many of them don't get kind of can we do a 1 hour call where I just talk you through the system? It happened all the time at McLaren when new people would go on new platforms and they wouldn't get like a standard, little induction training. And I think that's maybe, pushing it back onto the tech companies a little bit. Maybe that's something that everyone can do, is just make some kind of short videos that you've got to, in the same way that to get your ticket, you've got to fill out your profile to come into the event.
Yeah.
Actually, to start using that platform, you've actually got to watch, an hour video. And once you've watched your hour video, you're kind of in. Because in an hour, you can train most bits of event tech in an hour. And if you can't, you need to work on your UX probably.
Absolutely. Alison?
Yeah, I guess we have to be a little bit careful about why we're putting in place the event technology that we're talking about, because yes, you say you can't lead a horse to water, so you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, if the horse doesn't want to drink, then why are we trying to do it anyway? And I think it's got to answer a need from the audience. If they don't need it, then why are we doing it? Yeah. I would question. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we're doing because we can then gather data from it. So how do we marry that with what actually answers the need of the people coming to the show? And it's exhibitors will be one thing, but of course it's all got to come back to the visitor, because that's who they want to engage with, that's who they want to meet. So, as I say, I've got somebody who specifically works on the engagement between the touch points and the audience. Now, in theory, that person shouldn't have to exist.
Yeah.
Actually, they should want to do it themselves anyway, because it's part and parcel of their experience. And I've never been asked to, or been forced to use a bit of tech on a retail platform. It's just something you go through because it's part of the process, and it's something you need.
No, I think that's a really valid point, and I think every organizer knows. Coming from an organizer background myself, you can send an email, but the majority of people don't read it. So as soon as you introduce something new into the event environment, people just stick to what they understand and what they know. So it can be frustrating from an organizer's side. Are we running low on time? Sorry? 10 minutes. Okay, great. That puts a good position. So Matt, we're going to go to some of the questions now. I think there's a question I'd quite like you to touch on. So it says, is there a role for an independent technology consultant given the myriad of technologies, or should technology providers be more consultative on their approach to sales? Really dropping that one on you there.
No. There is a video on YouTube called the Vendor-Client Relationship, and everybody should watch it. It's from about 20 years ago, and I'll just leave it at that, the vendor-client relationship. The problem with this industry in particular is that we're all competing against each other, and it's very hard to get people to work together. The other thing about this industry is that even though there's 3,000 event technology companies, we're all fighting for the same budget. So we're not all competitors per se, but we are actually competitors when we're fighting for the same budget. What was the second part?
So it's just asking about whether should there be a middleman? Should there be somebody who's connecting the dots as opposed to the technology companies, or should tech companies be more consultative in the way that they're approaching it?
Maybe I think if there are going to be consultants, then you're going to end up having the same situation that we have in the golfing world right now, and that you're going to start seeing alliances and people referring only the ones they're going to get the biggest kickbacks from. I think what we really do need, though, is that the tech companies give us an opportunity to actually talk more openly and transparently about what we do. And then we might not need the independent consultants, but I don't think there's a way to win this at all.
And I'd say, you're right, and it's even harder. If you're only going to spend 10% of your marketing, of your entire budget on marketing, I don't know what you guys spend, but let's say you spend 10% on marketing and 25% on a venue, you're only, there is no more money to go and get. So, you have to make the decision about, am I going, is registration the key thing? Is the matchmaking piece the key? Is the video at the event key? Now if we're streaming all of our events, some of this cost is going to be hitting that part of my line. And I think having, and tech is going to be, the digital bit's going to be a component inside your marketing lines. That's how it's generally been on all our shows. So, if you're getting a middleman, he's going to want money as well. And I think certainly every organizer I've met prioritizes a slightly different thing as to what they think the key thing is. Easy Fares will be prioritizing slightly different to a Reed, something slightly different to an Informer. They all have a slightly different way of operating, and I think that's why there aren't loads of consultants here selling products. Because this sector is not one of those types of sectors. I think this is you're either buying it as a package or you're buying it SaaS, and that's the way this model works. This isn't like environmental services where I've got 50 different factories and they're all built in slightly different ways, and you need to come in and work out the carbon footprint of each one of those factories, and they each need a different requirement. We're doing 200 events or 100 events or 10 events, and you almost want that same solution, and you want it to be easy. You want it to be plug and play, and that generally is this sector, it's a plug and play sector, and I'm not sure you need a consultant when you've only got 10% of your money to spend anyway.
So this is interesting. The plug and play discussion is an interesting conversation that Alice and I were having before the meeting, and it's maybe something we can touch on again, Alison, is events by their very nature are unique. Every event is different. So creating a plug and play solution is difficult, because you can't create something and buy it off the shelf because it won't work from event to event. So how do we overcome this, Alison? And what would you like to see from the technology industry that would really help you with your events?
I don't know how we overcome it, because it's a challenge I'm currently facing at the moment. I think, what we were talking about before is that essentially we're not looking at a solution for a business. We're not looking at a solution for Reed. We're not looking at a solution for Informa or a solution for Easy Fares. We're looking at a solution for a lot of mini businesses beneath that have all got different requirements to their events. And that's certainly a problem we have, where at Easy Fares we try and create the technology that will work in the same way across every single one of our events. But I'm constantly dealing with points from the teams where they're saying, well, okay, but that doesn't work for this show because we have X, Y, and Z. So one of the examples we were talking about is for our aesthetics portfolio, we have to verify healthcare professionals to be able to enter certain seminars. Now, that's not going to be the same for any other event that we run. So how do you bolt that on? And I don't know the answer to it, if I'm honest.
Duncan?
But wouldn't you just take a reg company who has verification as part of one of their modules and just not turn it on to the other people? Because I think the industry is actually plug and play. I mean, you and I think differently then. I think I agree. We are, every one of the big organisers, all those acquisitions have all bought smaller businesses, and they all do have different ways of operating. And you're right, because you've got to have a clinical level or whatever it is to get into that session. But the reg company that you'll use generally will have that functionality. It won't be that you're having to go to a completely different type of, everyone has badges with lanyards and naming and QR codes. So it's almost all the same. It's just little tweaks in product, isn't it?
Well, I think when you use the same registration platform over 200 events and you've got one show that then says, but I need this, you change your entire ecosystem, your technology ecosystem for that one event. And that's the problem we have, is that we use GS actually. Well, yeah, but they have their own issues as we do about their sort of development roadmap, and so I think it's a challenge because you've got lots and lots of exceptions, and that's just one. There's always going to be an exception on another show and an exception on another show.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, really shouldn't be my point to add in as a chair, but I have to say, from Alison's perspective, you do have events that will have messaging in different ways, or the ways that you connect with them, they have permissions that are different. So it does change, and that's why all of these companies are growing in terms of the products they offer. It's a changing industry, and it has to be adaptive. Do you find this issue? I mean, this is something that I'd be keen to hear from you about. Is do you find you're having to adapt your product from one event to another?
Not so much, because there are some sort of common standards. Sorry, I know we have to finish, but I will say, if there was one wish that I could have in the world, it would be to reduce the amount of questions that you ask at registration and let the show floor speak for itself, and decouple registration contracts from what actually happens on the show floor. And if you could have those two things, then you could actually have more flexibility in your procurement process to do more. And I think it's a big hindering factor.
Fantastic. Are we close to done, or we got one more question? Okay, so we'll leave on the big statement. So what do we think in the next 10 years the event industry needs to do in terms of having more adaptive technology that will improve the industry?
God, that's quite a difficult question, because I don't know if we're ever, I mean, I don't know where we're going to be in 10 years as an industry. I mean, if you believe Mark Zuckerberg, we're all going to be living in the metaverse. I don't think that's going to be happening. I think again, it's like the 15th time I've mentioned the pandemic, but I think the one thing that we realised during, those 18 months of not being able to leave the house was that actually we love this event sector, and we love coming together. We love getting face to face. We love, seeing friends that we've known for 20 years and having drinks at the bar and catching up and listening to good content and so on. And I think, that's the bit of events that we do know. I think, I mentioned earlier, I think handsets are going to become more and more important in how we kind of connect. I mean, it already is the centre of our life. If you think about banking, 20 years ago we used to go to the bank on the high street and have paying in books and checkbooks, and that's just gone, and you can never imagine that, a world where that existed. And I think there's definitely going to be some huge transformational changes in this sector that that I'm not clever enough to know about. Ask Mark Zuckerberg, he might know.
It's going well though, isn't it? Alison?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, the handset side of things. I think where we really need to be looking to get to over the next however many years is trying to deliver more of the technology through something that our visitor audience or our user audience actually are going to use and they identify with already. So it needs to be much more intuitive for them. I think it needs to be a much more seamless experience at the moment. I think right now it's very clunky for our users.
And to finish with you, Matt.
I think we'll start to use the data in real time. And once we start to learn how to use the data in real time, new business models and revenue models will just naturally evolve. But I think it's very difficult to see what that is actually going to be right now because we're not using it. The data will start to speak for itself.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think that's us for time, so thank you very much. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but if you do have anything, I'm sure the panelists will stick behind afterwards. I certainly will. So speak to you then. Thanks.
Great, thank you.